Hey guys, just before the video starts, just to let you know, unfortunately there is a little bit of intermittent audio static, some audio feedback. You'll notice a bit of jittery static in a couple of places, so I apologize about that. I didn't notice it was happening while I was doing the recording, and it doesn't ruin the video or anything, but you will notice it, and it is a bit annoying, so I just apologize for that. I'll do my best to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. That hasn't happened much at all before, so this seems to have been just a pretty isolated incident, but just be aware. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hello everyone, and welcome back once again to another review, another early addition to my One Piece journey. Today we're going to be talking about the Arlong Park arc, the much anticipated Arlong Park arc, but before we get into it, just a reminder that if you would like to watch the next review, my next review of the next arc right now, that is currently available on early access for $5 patrons. So the link to my Patreon is in the description and in the pinned comment. And you can watch my review of the next one right now, if you'd like to. And if you weren't aware, I'm streaming my reaction to, and my journey with the entire series, every single chapter. I stream those once or twice a week, so if you're interested in joining in, the energy's always really great. People are always very enthusiastic, very excited, engaging with my experience with the material and offering bits of insight, as well as just seeing someone new to the series, and vicariously experiencing it through them being me. If you're interested in any of that, you can follow me on Twitch, and every Sunday we read at least a little One Piece, and once in a while I have Fridays here and there where we do a full One Piece reading stream. You can follow me on Twitch if you're interested in that, link in the description and the pinned comment. That aside, this is the first video where we will be implementing the AJ Piece comments, where my mods will select a few comments from the video 2 videos ago, so this is the Syrup Village arc comments, for me to read them and either just react to it or say something or respond or anything. I'm not sure. I haven't read these comments specifically, so excited to see what you guys had to say. The first is a comment from Isopod, who says, "There's a pretty popular fan theory that Usopp is the narrator, and the series is actually a story being told by him after the fact. I just love that idea so much because of how it plays into those themes about lies, dreams, and the power of storytelling. I love that. I mean, obviously I don't know. I've only read 95 chapters out of 100, or 1,052, I think it is. So I don't know how the complexion of the story will change, but the idea of One Piece being Usopp telling someone a story, and how that feeds into all the themes of Syrup Village and the beauty of storytelling, in how stories can enhance your appreciation for life and just immerse you and engage you in such beautiful ways, and One Piece being exaggeratory intentionally through its presentation and expression and how it portrays a lot of these events, I think it all feeds into itself really well, and I love that interpretation. That is really meaningful, and I think adds quite a bit to Usopp, hypothetically, and One Piece a little bit as a whole, if you buy into that. That's a great idea, thank you for sharing. And the next comment is from Peter Blade Strock. Again, sorry for the pronunciation. "I'm really glad you liked Syrup Village. People generally aren't big fans of it, yet I really enjoyed it. Glad to see that I'm not alone. Your analysis is top-notch. We don't really have meticulous, high-level analysts in the One Piece community. Someone who truly understands the nuances in writing and puts them into words. What you're doing is really special. You're basically explaining my thoughts and feelings in detail, and that's generally hard for people to do. Thank you." Well, that's very sweet. I don't know exactly how to react to that, but that's just a generally lovely thing to read. Well, firstly, thank you for the kind words, and I'm not sure that I'm worthy of them, but I'm really glad that you enjoyed the videos and the reactions and reviews and streams, and I hope that a lot of people agree with that, and that these videos can be fulfilling for a lot of you guys in one way or another. Thank you again for the support. I didn't mention it earlier, but it's continued to be magnificent and really fulfilling, and it enhances my appreciation for the story as well, so thank you guys as well. Contempt Man says, "Try to remember Usopp's lies if you can. I think they forgot to write lies there, but I was told that lies is supposed to be a part of the comment. Won't say why because of spoilers, but a little down the line you may want to skim through and refresh about what those lies were. Hopefully Twitch chat reminds you or something." Yeah, sure. I have no problem doing that. I can't say that I'll commit it to memory exactly, like I'm not gonna remember every little detail of all of his lies, but I know them generally now, and I'll go back and refresh every little bit, or when I'm prompted to by someone in chat or a comment or something, I'll do so. I'll keep my eye on Usopp's lies. Thank you. The next one is from Nanashi, who says, not sure if you know or if I just missed it, but a cool connecting point between Luffy and Usopp is that Usopp's dad, Yasopp, was actually recruited by Shanks and is now an officer of the Red Hair Pirates. Yasopp actually used to tell Luffy stories about Usopp when they met in Fuchsia Village. Yeah, so thank you for pointing this out because it's very important. We talked a lot in the Syrup Village video about Usopp's dad and what that meant for him specifically and the idea of this futile dream. I don't believe I mentioned it in that video, and I don't actually know if I knew in that video, but nonetheless, since then I've been made aware, or I knew somehow. The point is, now I'm aware that Yasopp was part of Shanks's crew. The Red Hair Pirates, or whatever it's called. And yeah, I'm aware of that. It's very cool. Though that could be a potential seed leading to a really interesting dynamic between maybe Usopp and Luffy with regards to what their role models mean for them, or maybe the realization that his father is alive potentially could lead to a really important self-affirming moment or turning point for Usopp, or just emotional gratification in one way or another. Either way, that's an important detail, especially with regards to Syrup Village, and thank you for pointing it out because I am aware, but it's definitely really important to let me know about that, and I don't remember if I was aware when I recorded the video. I might not have been. This is from Edgy Von Karma, great username. For anyone who catches my Ace Attorney streams, I can now understand what that username's referring to. Fun little tidbit for Usopp, since you mentioned The Boy Who Cried Wolf. His name is a reference to Aesop's Fables, where that story originates, not to mention that Uso is Japanese for lie. I love when writers create meaningful names for their characters. That is interesting, I had no idea. I mean, the allusions to The Boy Who Cried Wolf, or at least a story in that vein, was pretty obvious, but I'm not familiar with Aesop's Fables, and I did know what lie meant in Japanese, but I didn't make the connection that those two merged together is the origin for Usopp's name. So that's really cool trivia. Thank you for sharing. The penultimate one from Santiago Rocha? Sorry, Santi, if I'm mispronouncing, who says, I think I already said this on stream, but reading it along with you is what is making me actually like One Piece. I've watched about 900 episodes up until the current episode some years ago, rushing to get to the good part, quote-unquote, and there was no quote-unquote good part. But now watching you read it, it's amazing. I finally got to see the small details and themes and analyzing the characters in a way I never did because I was focused on finishing. Like the Jing line everyone here knows by heart now, I am appreciating the manga by enjoying the little detours, not focusing on the objective. Thank you, AJ. Firstly, you're welcome. And that's another one that's just really gratifying to read. Like I said, if these streams and reviews and things like that are able to enhance your appreciation for the story in one way or another, then I've done my job, and I'm really glad about that. Especially in this case, where Santi says that they just didn't like One Piece much until these streams started. You know, people often come to me and say, you need to read this many chapters in this stream, you need to read this chunk, because you need to get to this arc really quickly. And I appreciate the enthusiasm, of course, for me to get to those arcs, but I'll get to them when I get to them, you know? And I'm enjoying what I'm reading right now, what I'm experiencing right now. I don't want to just skip over these things that Oda put his heart and soul into writing for the sake of things that'll come later. I really want to focus on the here and now, the detours, quote-unquote, rather than focusing on finishing. I don't know if I've said this in my reviews, but what I've consistently said on stream is that I don't know if I will ever catch up to One Piece. At this pace, if I continue enjoying and I continue these reviews, I will. But it's not a foregone conclusion, and finishing is never part of my motivations or thoughts or anything. I'm just focused on the arc I'm on right now, and connecting it back to previous ideas. So that's my philosophy when it comes to this, not focusing too much on when it gets good, or getting to the end, or getting to a certain arc in the future, just taking in what I've got now. And for the record, I mean, you guys know my thoughts on the series so far. To me, it's already good. Jumping ahead a little bit, but I was talking about why Arlong Park is very good, and someone in chat said, now can you understand why people say that Syrup Village isn't good? And I said, no, Syrup Village is still very good. Arlong Park being better does not mean that anything is taken away from how good Syrup Village is at the things that it does. So yeah, I'm really appreciating these more minor, in the context of the series, more minor arcs, and I hope you guys are okay, again, with this slower approach. From what I've read in the comments, you seem to be enjoying that I'm taking my time. And that's great. And the last comment is from Bozento, who is a patron. Thank you for your support. And Bozento says, in this video, you touched on Luffy's simple thinking and character. Do you have any general expectations with his writing going forward? Like, do you expect Oda to flesh Luffy out, to have more complexities in his character, or do you think Oda will stick with Luffy kind of embodying that art of simplicity? It's a good question with regards to Luffy, because I do wonder how far that can go in this story. I wonder if there's maybe a ceiling to this sort of design. Right now, early on in the series, Luffy is one of the best characters. I think he's great. But I do wonder, as the series expands in breadth and depth and scope, if that approach will change. To answer the question, if I had to guess, I would say that the core of Luffy will remain the same, and that core is very, I don't know if simple is the right word to describe his core and the crux of his character, even if there is simplicity in his design. What I would rather say the core of his character is based in is a raw honesty that can manifest in simplicity, but it's a raw honesty. He's very honest, he's very forthright, he's very straightforward, and knows what he wants, knows what he values, knows who he cares about, and just acts with his heart on his sleeve. And so that core is very applicable and generalizable to all sorts of situations. It can manifest in all sorts of different ways depending on the situations that Luffy is exposed to. So I don't think that core will change, but I do think that seeing him and seeing how that core manifests in his characterization in all these different situations may cause him to grow in unexpected ways, may cause us to see different aspects to his character. And actually, there's a little aspect that is kind of similar to that I'll talk about in this video itself. So yeah, TLDR is that I think that the core of Luffy will remain the same, but I think his experiences will stretch that core and put him in unexpected situations and may lead to unexpected developments, while not changing who he is fundamentally. That's what I would guess, but who knows? So those are all the comments. Thank you once again for everyone who participated, and sorry if you weren't chosen. Again, my mods choose these comments, and they only choose a handful, because we don't want this to go on super long. They can only pick a select few. But just know that even if you weren't selected, that doesn't mean I didn't read your comment. I read all the spoiler-less comments. So thank you again for sending them in, and I hope you guys continue to send in these AJPeace questions for them to be highlighted in the next videos. Again, use the hashtag AJPeace in your comment to be entered into this pool, from which I'll react to a bunch of comments. But yes, that is the introduction out of the way, so let's talk about Arlong Park. Something that's really funny to me, nothing wrong with this of course, but just the sheer quantity of people who have told me as I've approached Arlong Park that this is the make or break point, this is the point of no return, this is the arc where people know if they're gonna love One Piece or not. Something to that effect, I have heard over the past few weeks literally hundreds of times. It's the arc where people fall in love with One Piece, where you get hooked, where you understand if the story's for you or not. This is the turning point arc. And so it's just funny to me how often I've heard that said. I mentioned that in my streams, and it's just interesting. But I do see where people are coming from when they say that to an extent. For instance, this is the first arc where we have the team together, working together, and this is the first arc, we'll get into this in a bit, but where we really see the Straw Hat crew as a unit, fighting for each other, for themselves, for all their collective dreams. And this is where you really see the bonds between the crew as a unit. You know, I know the crew expands from here, but Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, Usopp, and Nami together here, it was something to behold, really. It was beautiful seeing them all fight together, which is something we really didn't get in the arcs before this. This is the first time where you really see those connections manifest in totality. You know, last arc we had Zoro fighting and Luffy supporting him, Sanji fighting, Luffy supporting him, but Nami was gone, Usopp was gone as well. It was much smaller scale. Similar things with Syrup Village and before that. For the first time, there are 5 characters here, and I know the crew will expand, but 5 is enough for it to be a crew. And it's the first time where they work together and coalesce in this way. And I think that was a great hook for what's to come. And it's a great hook because it's lovely to see this. And I think it's representative of where the story might go in terms of their interactions and their cohesion as a collective, while also pursuing their own individualistic dreams. So if I had to guess, that might be a part of it. There's also very immense and deep emotional storytelling, though that was there before. So If I had to guess what people are referring to, I would say it would be that the crew is together, the crew are fighting as one, as a unit. Aside from that though, I wouldn't agree that this is anything hugely different in terms of the approach or style, but I will say it's the best example of it so far. This is my favorite arc up until now. I know I keep saying that every time I make one of these videos, but yeah, this was my favorite. It just keeps going from strength to strength. But while it was my favorite, it wasn't a huge turning point for me personally. There wasn't a moment where I felt like it clicked, and I think that my approach and investment in One Piece is characterized much more by a gradual investment than just me going, wow, I get it, this is the turning point for me. You know, my experience is a bit different than that, but it's equally as fulfilling. You know, everyone has different experiences with art. For some, this was maybe a turning point or the moment where they got hooked. For me, this is just an increase in the investment I had been feeling beforehand. But yes, like I said, this is my favorite so far. I don't know if it peaked harder than Mihawk versus Zoro from Baratie, or maybe the backstory for Sanji and Baratie, but I will say that it had the most sustained quality and consistency of quality throughout, the most consistent emotional punches. Like, there are more moments in this arc that made me emotional or captivated. There were more moments like that, and they were strung together by a bit more quality than previous arcs, where, for example, in Baratie, I love Baratie, but you can kind of say that arc is separated by... I'm simplifying, I'm being rudimentary, so forgive me, but just to get my point across, you can say that arc is separated by Zoro versus Mihawk and all the amazing stuff surrounding that, and then there's a bit of a lull and some fighting that's a bit thinner, and then there's the Sanji material with him and Zeph, and then the fight, and then the conclusion. In Syrup Village, there was a bit of a lull as well, where it was thinner, where we had the stuff with the Meow Band brothers and the fighting. This arc, I felt the least amount of thinness in a lot of the fights. I felt like basically every chapter had something to contribute and something of substance to say. Maybe not every single one, but most of them. And so it was more consistent in that way to me. And I think it had the well-rounded character work to an even greater extent, potentially, probably, than Baratie, and it had the thematic cohesion of Syrup Village. And I think it was a marriage of both of those elements together. In a really effective package. Not to say that Syrup Village didn't have really good character work, of course it did. I gushed about Syrup Village in that video. And not to say that Baratie had great thematic cohesion, of course it did. I talked about the themes of food and togetherness and connection and dreams and all of that in that video too. But I do think that each has its own primary focus. At least that's the way that I look at it. Whereas this arc, I think, has both elements in equal standing. It was the most consistent and moving and emotional arc. It had amazing character work, some of the fights were cool, and just start to finish, it was very strong. It was really good. And like I said, having the Straw Hats work as a team really just added that little bit extra. So like I mentioned in my Baratie video, I'm sure everyone who read this or watched this, you could just kind of guess that this was going to be Nami-centric. We got that hook at the end of, or in the middle of Baratie as she's leaving on the boat that she stole, the ship that she stole. Something to the effect of, when will I finally be free, Belle-Mère? I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what she said. And that made me wonder, what does it mean for Nami to be free? Who is Belle-Mère? Why is she so emotional about this? And does this have to do with her attitude towards pirates and her devastating past? What was all that about? That was a great hook to lead into this arc. And yeah, this arc answers all of that and more to great effect. And as I mentioned in previous videos, Nami and the crew were growing connections. They were growing in their bonds. But whereas Zoro and Luffy immediately clicked, Usopp immediately became full-heartedly part of the crew, it seems like, and just jumped in with 2 feet. Sanji and Luffy had this immediate connection when they bonded over dreams and the idea of the All Blue and Luffy's dream and what that means to Sanji to follow someone who's a kindred spirit in that way. Every member of the Straw Hats had this very deep connection that made them feel immediately like a brotherhood, like a family. But Nami didn't quite connect with them in that way. And so I talked before about how it seemed like her bonds with Luffy and Zoro were strengthening. They were connecting with one another, and they were building that bond in a bit of a different way, a more gradual way. But it didn't really seem like Nami was part of the crew in totality yet. This arc changes that. This is Nami's formal induction into the crew. This is where she 100% jumps in, She has no reservations. She didn't have the motivation she had in this arc to abandon them or to leave and quote-unquote betray them to help out her village, to help out Cocoa Village. She has nothing else except going for her dream, gunning for her dream, which we'll talk about in a bit. And so she can connect with them on that deep level, and she is 100% a part of this crew just as much as anyone else, and that's a lovely thing. So usually in the beginning of these arc videos, I talk about the characters that I have some miscellaneous notes to talk about, but I won't talk about too much throughout the plot. I don't know exactly how that'll go because, like I alluded to, each character shines in one way or another in this arc, and I'll probably be drawing attention to all of them. But in terms of characters that aren't quite as pivotal, I just want to mention Zoro, Sanji, Nojiko, Genzo, and Arlong. And then Arlong has some grunts as well, some right-hand men, but primarily those 5 that I just mentioned. All of them were deeply contributory to the arc, all of them were very notable, all of them had interesting character work. Zoro continued a lot of his fixation on Mihawk and his dream. We'll talk about some of the details about that as we go along, but Sanji, this is his first real time fighting as a part of the crew, and it was lovely to see, and there are some interesting details about him as well. And then Nojiko, Genzo, and Arlong, they were all really good in their own individual ways. Specifically, Nojiko and Genzo were some of the most impressive arc-specific characters so far that I can really talk about. If I had to narrow it down, I'd say the most impressive arc-specific supporting characters, more minor or secondary characters, would be Zeph, Nojiko, and Genzo. They added so much for the context of Cocoa Village, the themes of the arc, a lot of the togetherness and common cause idea, and they're both extremely endearing in their own ways. And Arlong is an interesting take on the villain. He's the first villain that truly feels heinous and elevated and awful and like a real, genuine threat. Mihawk obviously is a real genuine threat in terms of power level, because he just disposed of Zoro, no problem. But because of the kinship he has with Zoro, because of the way he so wholeheartedly respects Luffy, respects Zoro, encourages Zoro to surpass him, to beat him, because of that respect, I consider him to be more of an antagonist than a villain. He's certainly not as dark and heinous a character as Arlong, and so Arlong distinguishes himself as being the first villain of these arcs that I really consider to be a huge threat with darkness and ill intent, and just someone that's very traditionally hateable. And then, for some reason I didn't list her, but then there's Belle-Mère. What a great minor character. She does so much for the arc, and she elevates it so much through her sacrifice and her will, and how that carries on in her daughters. Again, that theme of inherited will, it's a bit more prominent in Baratie, but it's definitely important here and in the previous arcs as well. But yeah, all the characters I just talked about were great, and we'll talk about them more as we go along. But if I had to narrow it down to my 3 favorite characters from this arc, Usopp, Luffy, and Nami are the 3 I think who are the most elevated by this arc. Nami's the star of the show, but Luffy and Usopp continued to get fantastic character work through what they did, and I love what this did for them. But we'll get to that. Oh, and just a little note about Belle-Mère. I'm aware that Belle-Mère essentially translates to stepmother, just in case anyone was wondering, I'm aware of that. Anyways, the arc starts, and they're obviously pursuing Nami, they're pursuing her to see what's going on there, and Luffy is very determined to see what the hell's going on here and to get his navigator back. So they pursue her to Cocoa Village and Gosa Village and Arlong Park and that congregation of villages. The island itself was shown in a pretty easy and simple visual, and so yeah, we follow them to there. An interesting tidbit that seems to be a plot element that Oda is planting early on that may come to fruition later, I love that way of plotting, by the way, is that we're introduced to the concept that there are 7 warlords in the sea. 7 warlords. They're hired by the government to share the plunder they get with them, and they're called government dogs. They're called government dogs because they're working for the government, and they're not respected as genuine pirates because genuine pirates, quote-unquote, look at the way that they serve the government and look at that as disrespectful or contradictory to the spirit of what a pirate means, or what being a pirate means. and just don't respect them. At least don't respect what they stand for. I'm sure they respect their strength because they're the 7 warlords. But that's what I got out of that, and it's just cool world building to expand the scope and scale in terms of the world and what lies ahead in terms of, I guess, strength. And it's revealed that Mihawk was one. Mihawk is one of these 7 warlords, and that's interesting because one of the first words that come to my mind when I looked at Mihawk and Baratie was, this is a bona fide pirate. So it's interesting that he's looked at as a government dog, despite being a warlord and not respected as a pirate, despite so clearly embodying the impressiveness, at least in my view, of what a pirate stands for. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm really interested to look at more of what these 7 warlords are, who they are. I'm sure that'll be a huge plot element. We'll see how that goes. And another little detail is that the cover stories, the cover art stories, whatever you call them, for this, of course, I keep paying attention to them. I keep reading them and gathering little bits, tidbits and bits of insight. They essentially chronicled Koby and his adventures in the Navy as he continues to study and do his job and be dutiful and work his way up and all of that. And what's interesting is that we see him interacting with Helmeppo, who is the stark contrast to Koby. But I'm glad to see my boy Koby doing well. He's a good boy, and I hope he achieves his dreams. Again, I love the cover stories for what they add, and they show that even if they're not prominent, like I said, Oda is thinking about Koby. Koby still has a role, even in the background. And so in addition to that, what seemed to happen in these cover stories, from what I can understand, is that the Navy had Captain Morgan captive, and then Koby and the rest of the Navy and Helmeppo and everyone else were receiving someone named, I think the rank was Vice Admiral Garp, and then later on, it seems like Captain Morgan struck Garp. It seemed to be a super devastating blow. I don't know if Garp was just a one-off character that died there, and then he's just gone now, or if he was just knocked out. Either way, Captain Morgan struck him in the head, and then made his escape, due in part to him taking his own son as hostage, which is funny. So I'm just assuming he escaped the captivity, which could be important for future things down the line. These cover stories were actually, I think, my favorite, because it caught us back up with Koby, Helmeppo, Morgan, and then it showed us a pretty vital plot point that Morgan has gone off now. So, yeah, I'm continuing to read the cover stories. I'm definitely getting a lot out of them, and it's just great to see Oda continuing to flesh out his world outside of the more prominent, front-loaded stuff. They continue to be great, and I'm sure that these plot points will be important, and it was just great to check back in with Koby. R.I.P. Admiral Garp, if you are truly dead. But with the arc proper, there is the main thematic notes that I get here. It continues a lot of previous things just applied to Nami's specific situation. So for example, the idea of her treasure, the idea of what you're willing to do to protect your treasure, the idea of this grand dream that is so far in front of you that it seems like it's just out of your reach, but nonetheless you strive for it regardless, and the adventures along the way can end up being worth it in and of themselves. All that applied to Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, in some ways to Usopp. He has a bit of a different distinction, which we'll talk about later, but more or less to Usopp as well. And now this arc makes it apply to Nami. So again, the idea of dreams, the idea of treasure, the idea of striving for this dream, and having conviction in carrying it out, all that, it's a continuation of that, but in a totally different context now applied to Nami and the plot of Arlong Park. But in addition to that, it puts front and center a lot of other themes, like the idea of freedom. And again, freedom was tackled in other ways prior, but this specific freedom, almost a spiritual, contextual freedom, is very important here. To skip ahead a little bit to Nami's situation, you may be doing what you love, and from a shallow perspective or for an outsider looking at what you're doing, it may seem like you're fulfilled. But if your heart is not free, and you're not surrounded by connections and goodwill and love, and if you're not free, then doing what you quote-unquote love just isn't fulfilling in that context. It becomes empty. It becomes a chaining obligation. So I like the idea that's brought forth here, which we'll touch on, of course, that the context is what makes these deeds meaningful and gratifying. Sometimes things that you love as a concept can be your chains. You know, Nami did what she loved, but she was chained into doing it for a man she hated, she despised in a room that was her prison. So, despite her doing what she quote-unquote loved, she didn't love doing it. She wasn't free doing it. She had to be free to enjoy it. And I think that's very profound. And tied to that, there's also the idea of materialism and how that ties to Nami and how she would always steal things and be obsessed with material things. It all comes down to context. Nami wanted these material things because it was done in service of protecting her treasure, her village, saving her village. But when Arlong provided her with whatever she wanted, it didn't mean anything. It was nothing but continuous pain. And so the context of these material things, the value in things intrinsically has to do with the sentimental context of them. I think that was a big theme here. And then also one more would have to do with blood ties. The nuances of blood ties and what they mean to one person or another comparatively. Yeah, all those themes were, I think, pretty prominent here. And so the first new character that we're properly introduced to early on, I would say, like the proper introduction, would be Nojiko. She makes a great first impression. There is this kid who is trying to get revenge on Arlong for hurting someone close to him. I don't remember the kid's name nor the specifics of the situation, so apologies for that. But she stops the kid from getting revenge and says, "You do that, you're gonna die." Interestingly enough, a tiny bit of a contrast to the way in which Luffy and the others are willing to put their lives on the line for the sake of honor and ideals and the physical, for lack of a better word, life being less important than the ideals and conviction you stand for. A bit of a contrast to that, because Nojiko very much values life, and the lives of the people in the village and her life. She values all of that. And that's an interesting precursor, because that's very front-loaded to the experiences that she and Nami have gone through, because we find out later that Belle-Mère paid with her life to save theirs. That's a simplification of it, but that's what happened. So you can understand why she would gain this value for life as a result of that. But you can just tell she's very weathered, she's not willing to go too far to stop the kid. She says her piece, you know, value your life, etc. But then the kid is just like, no, I'm gonna go anyway. And she just goes, screw it. You wanna lose your life? I've said my piece, I've told you what you should do, it's your choice. I'm just not... She's just tired. She's not going to bend over backwards to rush after this kid after telling him, what you're doing is foolhardy. What she says here is, when I see a kid that's too cowardly to live, which is very interesting phrasing of that, I just feel sick. And it's because she knows someone who's faced a life worse than death. Someone who we now know to be Nami, working in captivity essentially for 8 years. We then learn that she's Nami's stepsister. And then so you can glean a lot of subtext from a lot of the little lines that she talks about, with knowing that she's grown up with Nami in mind. Also, neat little detail, there's a tangerine grove by where she lives, which was also characteristic of Belle-Mère previous to this. And it's really kind of cool that Nami talks early on in the series, when we were first introduced to her, about how she really likes tangerines. So I just thought that was cool. And then so in this introduction to the arc, we're shown that Nami is actually in league with Arlong. She's a thief and navigator slash cartographer working for Arlong and his crew. And she has a tattoo signifying her connection to the... I guess that was the wrong shoulder. This shoulder, signifying her connection to the pirates. And so Nojiko says, I grew up together with Nami. We were raised by the same person. That person who raised them is dead, and Nami now terrorizes the place. She's a quote-unquote witch to Coco Village. So Nojiko lays out a lot of interesting bullet points of Nami's life for the past, well, her entire life basically. And so it's interesting to see where she's been, where she was, where she is now, what she's doing, because it gives us impetus and a hook to want to fill in the gaps to understand the context. Because I haven't read One Piece for a lot of time, but it's just clear that there is tons of detail that's going to be fleshed out and enriched the more we learn about Nami and her childhood through this arc. And that did end up being the case. And so the Straw Hats, the rest of the crew, they engage with the island and the village and everything. And what I found was really cool is that Zoro made his way towards Nami, towards Arlong, towards their whole crew. And what he did here was almost drown himself so that Nami would save him, so that he could understand that, okay, she's not all bad, she's not this witch, she has some reasoning here to prove that Nami has not completely betrayed them. It's a very extreme thing to do, to literally put yourself at risk of drowning just to prove out of faith that Nami would save you, but it's also very, very, very Zoro, very simple, very extreme, And it also shows the immense trust he has in Nami, because we know more than anything that what Zoro wants is that he has to become the strongest swordsman. That is more important than his life. But if he gets rid of his life for something like this, then he can't become the greatest swordsman. And a death like that is not in service of the ideals that contribute to his dream. So while Zoro is willing to put his life on the line and has his life as less important than his ideals, as we saw in Baratie, this has nothing to do with his dream. This just shows his immense faith that Nami was going to save him, which is kind of touching. In a small amount of time, he's grown that amount of faith in her, and I like that a lot. We learn more about the village. We learn that Arlong collects tributes to fund his endeavors from the villagers, and so keeping the villagers alive is obviously in his interest, so he can keep leeching off them for profit, basically. These villagers pay him money so that he won't pillage their homes and kill them all. That's basically it. It's oppression through terror, and it funds his objectives. And so this is a good time to talk about Arlong just a little bit. I find him really interesting. Like I talked about earlier, through this oppression of terror, through the flashback, which we'll get to soon, but I'm just jumping ahead a little bit, and what he did to Bell-mère, and what he continues to do after that, what he did to Nami, all of that just elevates him in authority and threat and darkness, which is really important for the gravity of this arc and the ever-increasing stakes of One Piece as a whole. But he also is using these funds to contribute to the Arlong Empire so that he'll eventually be able to rule the East Blue. That is one of his ultimate goals, and this oppression through terror helps fund that. So it's in his best interest to keep the villagers alive and only threaten death, because a dead villager cannot provide him with money, or a dead village. But what's interesting is that Arlong and his crew, but it all comes down from Arlong, is extremely racist. That's a simplified way to put it, but essentially he believes that his fishman race, him and his fishman race, are the superior race. They are the master race, and all other races, humans, other species, whatever, must bow down to them because of them being superior. He sees humans as inferior and conceptualizes this superiority-inferiority dichotomy. A lot of it has to do with strength. He conceptualizes it as strength, and he refers later to the idea that it's in his genetics, it's in his blood. This fishman gene that makes him stronger and more powerful and bigger than humans essentially makes superiority his birthright. So what he's striving for is something that it's almost fatalistic in a way. Like, he is carrying out the role that is set out for him due to the bloodline that he was born into. Or something like that. I mean, I could be a little bit off. I'm not sure if future arcs cover Arlong, but that's the impression I got here. And so he has immense pride attached to that as well. If one of his fishmen get defeated by humans, or if he gets defeated by a human, or hit by a human, or hurt by a human, more annoying to him or frustrating to him most of the time than the fact that he lost, or his crewmen were killed or died, or were defeated, is the fact that humans did it. Because it counteracts that balance that he views as impossible to supersede in his mind. It counteracts his superiority complex, and he can't handle that, and he goes out in a rage, and he wants to kill people, and his crew have to, what's really interesting is his crew have to call him back and go, Arlong, no, we need these people, they fund us, we need their money, just chill out. So his crew have become accustomed to having to deal with these temper tantrums and his tendency to lash out, which is just really interesting. And I love the way that he's presented in a lot of those angry rants or tantrums or whatever you'd call them. Very exaggerated proportions, very bold lines. I really like it a lot. And Arlong in general is just really interesting. And also, Arlong has a big fixation on honesty and principles and carrying out his promises. He kind of is sneaky and goes against that later on when it comes to Nami because of how much he values her as a tool and as an asset, but that's implied, in my opinion, to be a bit of an exception. You know, he's dirty here, but outside of that, he seems to hold strong to his promises and agreements, and Nami was deeply surprised when he went back on their promise later on. So that tells me that Nami is used to him being honest and having these principles. So it's just interesting to have this horrible person who nonetheless sticks to his principles a lot, that time being an exception, of course. And just that, his almost honor system when it comes to carrying out his side of the deal and all of that, and his pride and how that coalesces with his conception of strength and how it applies to his idea of his birthright through blood. blood being this almighty thing connecting him to what this fate is that he's trying to pursue. It's really interesting. Arlong is a really interesting villain, and I think probably my second favorite antagonist up until this point. And to jump ahead a little bit, his fixation on bloodlines is really interesting because it directly contrasts Nami, who found a found family, that had nothing to do with her blood. They weren't her related family, they weren't related by blood, but nonetheless, she found her home here, and in her village, and found this abstract home and something to protect and this treasure that had nothing to do with bloodlines. Nami has no fixation on bloodlines whatsoever and can see immense value and fulfillment through these bonds that have nothing to do with that. And so it's an interesting study about how different people can view blood and how important it really is. And I think the conclusion here is that blood can be important, but it is not necessarily the be-all and end-all, and other bonds can supersede that depending on the context. And that was the case with Nami, and that's also the case with our crew. It's a found family. Luffy and all of the rest of his crew, they found one another, and they're kindred spirits and not related by blood at all, but their ties are strong and will continue to get stronger and stronger to make them closer than family. And I don't think the fact that Arlong is so antagonistic and villainous, converging with the way that he views blood, is a coincidence. It's almost a thematic antithesis to everything that Nami and the crew stand for with regards to this found family. And Arlong also just completely willing to lose profits that will contribute to his overall goal, his overall birthright, because his rage and ego and pride overpowers that, which is really interesting. I wonder if we'll get more about Arlong. It's interesting to think about. I'd love to see more from him for sure. And one more thing that I didn't mention as much when it came to Arlong is that he genuinely cares for his crew. Of course, just like him having these principles, despite betraying them, this doesn't mean that he's redeemed in any way, obviously. He's still a horrible human being, or a horrible fishman, I guess. But it's just interesting things to add layers and dimensions to him, and I like it a lot. And so in response to Arlong's terrorizing of them, Nojiko says something really interesting. And that is, all we can do is endure in silence for now. And Genzo says, Genzo's also introduced, forgot to mention him, but Genzo says 8 years of enduring, and that they swore to fight back by enduring. And they have been doing that for 8 years. So those two lines in conjunction are really interesting hooks for you to wonder what's going on here. What have they been waiting for 8 years? Does that relate to Nami? What happens after they're done enduring? How are they going to escape this situation? It's just really interesting and really weighty and emotional. We then learn later, as we see Nojiko and Nami interacting by a grave, Belmare's grave, that Nami's plan is to raise up 100 million berries, which would then buy the village and set the villagers free from this tyrannical reign of Arlong. And her goal isn't explicitly set at this point, but I hear it was pretty clear that what she's doing is, through her exploits as Arlong's cartographer, and all the work she's doing for him, and the thieving and everything, she is raising enough money to save the village. It's answered here, this is her treasure, and this may allude to the freedom she was talking about all that time ago in Baratie. And it said that betrayal is Nami's specialty. That sounds pretty dark when you first hear it. I think Nojiko might have said it. It sounds very dark when you first hear it, but with the context, it being her specialty, it's a selfless betrayal. Anyways, there are skirmishes here and there. Usopp comes in and saves the day. Well, not really saves the day, but he does his part. And I love that Usopp was more prominent from the beginning here. It all comes back to that idea, right? He rushes into all sorts of situations, but at the same time is so cowardly. He runs away and leaves Zoro to save his own hide. A lot of the arc consists of him fighting by running, which is interesting, and I just love it because, of course, these are cowardly things, but it all comes back to the idea that bravery is not defined by the absence of fear, but through overcoming it. And so Usopp, through running away, through being cowardly, but contributing through his cowardice, is being brave in his own way. But he didn't quite cross a threshold that he wanted himself to cross, and we'll get to that soon. But I just wanted to make a note that Usopp being more prominent, more front and center, and again showing off his humanity. Again, he's the closest thing to an everyman, a relatable person in this story. It's done really well here. And then so Zoro is left behind, a bunch of things happen, and Zoro ends up fighting a bunch of fishmen. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that Zoro is a freaking badass. This guy is completely torn apart from the inside out from his fight with Mihawk, and yet fights so much this arc. And not only fights, but is able to beat these fishmen who are literally stated to be essentially superhuman, way stronger than the average human, and he beats tons of them with this gouge through his chest or stomach or whatever's going on there. Zoro is a lot. He's a lot to handle. He's super raw. He continued to be really good throughout this arc through just drawing attention to what he's fighting for a lot of the time. Little mini flashbacks to his fight with Mihawk, and it was really good. And it starts through this. And what's notable is that he is doing this, proving that Nami has not fully betrayed them. One, because I think there's a bit of a connection there with Nami, but two, because he promised to Luffy that he would do it. And again, that alludes to this bond between Zoro and Luffy. They are basically brothers already, and this is very indicative of that. And what's interesting is that Nami says to Zoro, you guys are gonna waste it. 8 years of this, you guys are gonna waste it. I cannot have you screwing this up for me. Same deal with Usopp, where she, what looks like, stabs him and says essentially the same thing to him. You would ruin my 8 years of work. I cannot allow this to happen. And it just makes you wonder, obviously Usopp's not dead, but this ends up actually being a case of, to jump ahead a little bit, of her stabbing her own hand and her wrist or something, and the blood that goes everywhere being her own blood, and she bandages it up later. And that shows the kind of duality here, because she talks about, I can't let you guys screw it up, your presence here screws things up for me, but she can't bring herself to do it. She can't bring herself to actually kill Usopp. She can't bring herself to not save Zoro earlier, and so she has these two things, her treasure and her crew. And despite saying that they are in conflict with what she wants when it comes to defending her village, which they are doing. They are kind of in conflict with that. They're kind of curtailing it a bit through their involvement. She can't bring themselves to rid herself of their presence because she cares. It's nice characterization through action, less so than dialogue there. And as things are pillaged, Arlong's crew find a map to Cocoa Village, or of Cocoa Village. They are kind of deriding it and saying that it's stupid or childish or something. And Nami isn't super overt about it, but we do see that she's upset that either it's been found and desecrated in that way, or that it's being mocked, or maybe a bit of both. But either way, there's some great, darker Nami expressions in response to that map being found, and it's a precursor and hints at what her dream really is. Just like Sanji was mocked by pirates when he talked about his dream to reach the All Blue and was upset about that, same deal here with Nami. Luffy's indignant. He says that there's no way that Nami would kill Usopp when hearing about that, and that she's their shipmate. He made this judgment of her. She passed the threshold of impressiveness and connection for him, and so he goes, she's one of us. She would not do this. He is very emotionally intuitive and understands people quite well and what they would do, because he ends up being right. He has full trust in his instincts when it comes to evaluating people and appraising people, and he just leans on this. There's no way. There's no way Nami would do this. I know her. She's a member of our crew, she wouldn't do that. And obviously, like I said, this is a big part of Luffy's character, his way to appraise people and trust in them. And he ends up being correct. But the idea that came to my mind immediately there upon reading that was, what happens later in the story if Oda writes a situation where his judgments are incorrect, and he gets very horribly betrayed, and it leads to horrible implications or ramifications that he can't take back? That could be a really key spot of character growth for Luffy, and potentially him questioning the way he appraises people, but that's just a side note. Who knows if Oda will ever go there, but it's a possibility. I'm not saying that it has to happen, and if it doesn't happen that I'll be disappointed, because that's totally unreasonable, but I'm just saying, it just brought that thought in my mind. It's possible, who knows. The brothers, Johnny and Yosaku, they're in this arc too. They continue to play their minor roles. They leave here though, because they don't want to die. The others are staying due to a mix of Nami, believing in Nami, or carrying out Luffy, the promise to Luffy, or not fearing Arlong. But they are, more so than Usopp, very much wanting to preserve their life. Understandably so. They are more of an everyman than Usopp, I'd say, in that way. But, yeah, the brothers leave. They had some nice things in this arc. We'll draw attention to it when we get there. And Nojiko says, in and amongst all of this, that shipmates and friends are the most painful words for Nami to hear. or to hear spoken. Nojiko alludes to her past. She talks about how it being more complicated than anyone may have assumed, and Luffy says, I don't care, I'm not interested in her past. He doesn't really want Nojiko to explain Nami's past to him, and I think the nuance here is not because he's in denial about who she really is, but more so that it doesn't matter, because Nami is Nami. It doesn't matter who she was in the past or what she did. At this moment, she is trustworthy and she is loyal, and Luffy believes that fully, so nothing he learns about her past will change his confidence in that or shake that. And I love that. I love that pure confidence in his appraisal and confidence in who she is. All that matters is the here and now and how he can perceive that and appraise that. And I think that's an encapsulation of who Luffy is. Very forthright, very honest, very raw and simple. And then we get to the flashback. The centerpiece, I think, in my opinion, or one of them at least, of the arc. The flashback that Nojiko is the catalyst for as she explains the past to the rest of the Straw Hats. And here we see that Belle-Mère was indeed their stepmother. We see that Nami had a dream, and seems to be continues to have a dream, of potentially sailing the whole world and drawing a full map of the entire world. That is her dream. And I was so glad to read this. I was nerding out because I said previous to all of this that Nami does not have this sort of dream that a lot of the others tend to have. A lot of her crew tends to have. So I was a bit puzzled about her, but we see here that she has that exact same sort of dream. To chart out the whole ocean, there's that sort of, some would say, unbelievable or unrealistic tinge to it. Who knows if that's even possible, to explore every inch of the world and map it out? That is a hefty thing to do, to say the least. But so is becoming king of the pirates and finding the One Piece. So is becoming the greatest swordsman alive. So is finding the All Blue, that some consider to not be in existence at all. So here is where we see how she has that kinship with them. It all lines up here. It makes her similar to all of them. It makes her a kindred spirit in terms of goal. This is what she shares with the crew, and it was so cool for that to be revealed. This is her dream. It's very appropriate to who she is, and it makes that thematic cohesion with the rest of the crew very substantial. This is a crew of dreamers, people who dream of these far-off abstract goals, and who take solace and joy through the detours on the way to that goal. And it's just great. It's just really lovely. But the kids grew up quite poor. They didn't have a lot of money, they didn't have a lot of material things, they weren't able to have lavish meals all the time, and Belle-Mère just wasn't wealthy, which means that she couldn't provide for them in the way she wished she could. Belle-Mère was a marine, and on the day of this tempestuous storm, she was kind of left for dead. Seemed like she had very little will to live and or life in her. But then, in the middle of that storm, Nojiko came to her carrying Nami on her back. And so from that point on, she resolved to adopt them, to take them in, to be their mother, for them to be her daughters, and to provide them with a home, to provide them with happiness, and to take on that mantle, to take on that duty. And I think that being forced upon her, in the way that Nojiko came into her life carrying Nami, is what gave her the will to persist and carry on and live. I think that Belle-Mère maybe just gave up on everything until they came back into her life, and so she dedicated the rest of her life to giving those girls a happy family. It was her duty. And then so flash forward back to the present of this flashback, she doesn't have the most materialistic things to provide them with, but she does give them a home and love and the necessities and all of that. She is a wonderful mother, but she does explode a little bit because Nami says something extremely hurtful. She says that her and Nojiko are not real sisters, and Belle-Mère slaps her across the face straight up. She is so upset by that, and I think in that slap are mixed feelings of inadequacy for herself, thinking that maybe she's failed these girls because she hasn't been able to provide them with the home that they deserve and desire. If Nami is thinking this way, we're not real sisters, then how good of a mother really is she? So I think there are feelings of self-doubt there and inadequacy, but also she's just angry at Nami for not seeing the value of Nojiko and not understanding that just because you're not blood related doesn't mean that you can't be family. That's also an encapsulation kind of Nami's place in the Straw Hats, not being part of them really. But then in this flashback, Arlong comes to town, and he's demanding 100,000 berries for any adult in the village and they will be spared and not killed. 50k for each kid. And they make their way to Belmer's place. As Nami and Nojiko are out, she's back at home cooking a meal and splurging for them to give them a special meal for this day. Which is heartbreaking considering what's about to happen. But they make their way over to her house. Genzo, Nami, and Nojiko are chasing after them, and Genzo comes up with a plan. If Nami and Nojiko don't make themselves known, if they just escape and go off and flee, then they will obviously still be alive, and Belmer can live as well, because the problem here is Belmer only has 100k berries, enough to save either herself or both Nami and Nojiko. And you can see where this was going. She doesn't have 200k, so going along with Arlong's policy, either the two kids or her will have to die. And so the way around that is to pretend that Nami and Nojiko don't exist. Belmer pays for herself, she lives. They can work things out. As long as you're alive. As long as you're alive, things will be okay. Through this plan, everything can be saved. The village can be saved, everyone will be happy and whole. But Nami realizes here that despite her complaining in the past, I don't think I mentioned it, but she would complain about how they didn't have nice things, they didn't have money. She complained that she wasn't her real sister. She realizes here, you don't really know what you have until it's gone. And she goes, I love this village, I don't want to leave it, I don't want to leave Belmer, I want us all to be together. This is her home. And she didn't really realize it until it was threatened to be taken away. This is her life, this is her treasure. And it's here where the materialism theme is sort of flipped on its head for her, because here she realizes that she doesn't care. She doesn't care at all about money or clothes or extravagant food. She just wants to be back home with her family, with Belmer. She wants everyone safe and sound. And it takes this desperate situation for her to realize that. Money isn't worth it. All that matters is family and connections and love, and that is her treasure. Her village, her connection with her family, her home. And Belmer was able to provide them with that. They valued it so much because they never had it, or they hadn't had it up until now, or their former one had been taken from them. But Belmer, as we see, offers up to pay for the two kids, Nami and Nojiko, instead of herself. And so Genzo says something here, which is, don't throw away your life for pride, which is a really profound line, because throwing away your life for pride, or not throwing away your life, but putting your life on the line for pride, is exactly what Luffy and Zoro have been doing the entire time so far. We've been talking about this a great deal. How ideals and conviction and treasures and dreams supersede the importance of their lives. What Belmer is doing here is very much in kinship with what they've been doing there, which is one of the primary facets of One Piece. But what I like is that Oda is very balanced in his approach to this, because he doesn't say that this is the only way to view life. Because in Baratie, for instance, we have Sanji who says, no, it's so easy to not do that. We have Genzo here who says, don't throw it away for pride, just live, which is actually something that coalesces with a primary message here from Belmer after her death, which is, as long as you're alive, you can find happiness. And so, while Genzo and Sanji here either change their mind or their message is overpowered by the character in question who ends up giving up their life or putting their life on the line, they're not portrayed as wrong. So what I really like here is that Oda is able to balance these ideals and not say one is 100% correct, even though he has more emphasis on one. There's more richness and breadth to it than that, which I really appreciate to make the cast feel more balanced and to make just the world and thematic scope feel more natural and less one-minded. And what Belmer does here is spectacular. And Genzo said some things can be solved with money. They can be. But she doesn't care. And the meaning behind that, even more so than saving their lives, really got to me a lot. Because what she says here is that, of course she wants them to live, but for them to live outside of her dying would mean that she would have to give them up as daughters. She would have to pretend that they don't exist, that she doesn't care for them, that they aren't a family. Belmer says she would rather die than pretend that they weren't a family. And here she chooses ideals over life, emotion and sentiment over life. There are some things more important, and what makes you family is not blood. I want to forever be known as their mother. I don't ever want them to be living without a mother. And so just as her life was an extension, was extended due to seeing them in that storm all that time ago, that is what gave her the will to continue pushing forward. She's living for them. And so she dies for them. And so before Arlong does the deed, Nami and Nojiko in this deeply emotional scene go to her, go to Belmare. And they are bawling, and Nami regrets not being thankful enough, not saying enough, and wow, I'm welling up a little bit thinking about this. Belmare apologizes to them for not being able to provide them with as much as she wished she could, and for not being a good mother, which is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that she thought that way about herself, because if anyone in the series can make the claim that they're a good parent, it's Belmare. And I felt for Nami here, because that's so obvious and so true, and yet the things that she said that made her feel ungrateful in the moment are what her mother focused on. And she felt like she wasn't good enough in being a mother because of them. And knowing that you cause that sort of thought in the person you love most in the world right before they're about to die, that is a huge burden for Nami. It's huge. And one of the lines that really got to me the most was Nami in the midst of all this just going, "You haven't even seen my map. I wasn't able to make my map for you." And the villagers want to rise up to combat this. This is just awful to see. And here is where we see Arlong's pseudo-honor, his principles, or whatever you want to call it, where he goes, okay, they're attacking, you can beat them up, you can defend yourselves, you can do whatever you want with them, but leave their lives unscathed. Not a single person in this village will die, which is what he promised. He's true to his word. And the one person who dies because she doesn't pay for herself is Belmare, which is just really twisted, but very powerful and very effective and very interesting for Arlong. And we get all these beautiful interspersed segments of flashbacks from throughout their lives as they were growing up. As Nami would become more mischievous, we see them interacting together and becoming a family, and we see Nami gradually taking on some of Belmare's habits. We see how she taught them to be strong women, how she impacted their lives and everything. And then we flash back to the present of the flashback, and Belmare dies. But she dies smiling. Smiling in the face of the barrel right in her face, knowing that her daughters will be okay. At least they'll be living. And we get this quote from her where she says, "Whatever happens, don't curse the age you were born into. Don't worry about what others say. Don't lose your ability to laugh. No matter what, if you survive, then happy times will come. If you survive." And Nami realizes through this that she needs to live. Nojiko realizes she needs to live. And then Arlong finds Nami's charts. He realizes that she's responsible for them. He's impressed by them. And so he decides that he wants her on his crew. Genzo tries to stop her in a really great emotional scene, but she decides, no, you know what? If it means that the village can be saved, if it means that I can contribute to, or rather, if it means that I can gather up enough money to save the village later on in life, I'm gonna do this. And what's horrible is, as she's saying, this little girl, this little child saying, no, I'll do it, she has this sad, devastating smile on her face. Like, you can see her lip quivering, you can see her eyes twitching, you can see the tears in her eyes as she's saying, no, I'll do this for everyone. And so she takes on a gigantic burden by joining Arlong's crew. And that smile is really key, because we'll call back to it later. And so Nami here gets her wish. She gets her wish of being around rich people, being given a lot of things, but like we talked about, the context of it makes it empty, makes it unfulfilling. And she is chained, she is not free, which makes the things that she loves tainted, completely dark and devoid of life. She doesn't need money because of it itself, but because of the context that it can be applied to and what it will lead to. And so gaining these things in this specific way from a person like Arlong, there's no value there at all. And like I said, the expressions are so good, the tears through the smiles, the pain in her eyes that Genzo can see but nonetheless agrees to, for her and for the village. The poor girl, your heart just goes out to her so strongly, and it was a fantastic scene. And so this is the reasoning. This is why she needs money. This is why she's a thief, because she has to steal and carry out jobs for Arlong, and eventually she has to get enough money to get 100 million berries to save the village. And so it all clicks here. We understand her swindling, we understand the heart of the matter, we understand why she wasn't free, why she refers to Belmare so much, why she hates pirates. why she hates pirates. That was a huge element of her early on. It all makes sense. And so this puts into perspective why Cocoa Village is the way it is, the culture that's built up throughout it for the past 8 years. We just have to endure. We just have to endure, and that is our method of fighting back. And we will fight back eventually, but we can't yet. So this is that waiting. And so yeah, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but seeing what Belle-Mère did for them so that they can live, and what she said about as long as you're alive, you can find a place for yourself, you can find value, that is part of what, a huge part of why Nojiko talks to the kid earlier on and just says, you need to value your life more. That value for life was instilled in her from Belle-Mère and Nami as well, through how she says it's cowardly to have this sort of death wish. Because you have to have the courage to keep living on in the darkness that Nami surrounds herself with for this overall goal, for the place that she loves, for her treasure. And so she quote-unquote betrays them. The most painful word for Nami is friend. And so it's established freedom for Nami. The hook, the question that I had earlier on in Baratie, what freedom meant for her, it's stated here. Freedom is being free from Arlong, being free from these chains, these obligations, and being able to genuinely laugh. Being able to genuinely laugh, because she hasn't been able to do that in 8 years. And then we get into the plot point with Arlong betraying her, essentially, using a mole from within the Navy, Nezumi, to seize her funds and perpetuate the cycle and have her continue to work for him. Very underhanded, and again, it was that instance of breaking his word, maybe unofficially, but the sentiment of it is definitely there. So for the first time we see dishonesty from Arlong. And then Nami apologizes to the village because she was so close, and then she had it snatched away from her. She apologizes to them profusely, and it's a direct callback, the facial expressions that Oda draws here, to when she says, I'll join Arlong's crew. You know, the tears through the smiles. She's doing the same thing again 8 years later. This poor girl, just, I'll make it back. It won't take too long. We can just start over from the start. You guys just keep holding on and we'll do it. And Genzo is just sick of it. He is sick of having to have this child carry this burden. He is done. He is willing to rise up and stand up for her and stop piling this duty onto Nami. Stop forcing this girl to feel like she has to smile at these horrible realities, at the sacrifices that she has to make. And so Nojiko agrees with him, encourages Nami, and he's just done. Genzo is absolutely done, and what he says is, you fought well. And it's a brilliant way to sum up Nami. She did fight well. She fought until the end. But there comes a time where you have to rely on other people, which is a great little indicator of something we'll learn about Luffy later on. That's also a bit of a common theme here, but she accepts it here. She can't do it anymore. And Genzo knows that, and so he takes up this responsibility for him and the village. And the villagers go to fight. Now, this then coincides with what I think might be the best scene in the arc, and maybe in the whole series so far. It's definitely in the conversation for it, as Nami takes a knife and stabs her tattoo, the representation of her association with Arlong. She stabs it, she doesn't want it to be a part of her anymore. She wants to just gouge it out, completely cut it off from herself. Literally. Literally through doing that, it'll symbolize her being free from these chains. She forces it, she tries to force it off there, and Luffy is right there for her, just watching, just observing, and he offers this metaphorical shoulder to cry on, and this person that she can lean on, this other person she can lean on. He's absolutely there for her, and she struggles and yells, and Luffy is just there with this very simple expression on his face. The art here does wonders, again through the contrast with the mundane, more common and simplified expressions, to the over-the-top ones. Luffy does a ton here through being drawn very simply, and he just observes. And Nami just lets it all out, and eventually, she has to ask for help. She has to ask Luffy for help, and he obliges. He says, of course I will, in one of the most amazing moments. What I find interesting is when she's on her rant prior to asking for help, she says, you don't know anything, to Luffy. You don't know anything about my situation. And Luffy says, I know. He's not arguing with that, he's just agreeing with it. His approach here is very passive, just being there, not being too overt about anything, just essentially letting her psychologically let it all out before just asking him to be there for her. And it's a beautiful show of respect for her, of not being overbearing but at the same time being there for her, and it's so very Luffy. And so back to my point, what she says is, you don't know anything. And Luffy says, yep, I know. He agrees. And she also says, I told you to leave this island. And he goes, yeah, you did. And so he's in the affirmative and he agrees with those two statements. But Nami says, this has nothing to do with you. That's what she says. And Luffy does not say yes to that. He doesn't agree with that. Because it doesn't have nothing to do with him, it has everything to do with him. She's his shipmate, she's his friend, and her problems are his problems. He will take them on, he will be there for her, and he and his crew, they have everything to do with this. And so I love that he doesn't agree with her when she says this has nothing to do with you, because it does. And he demonstrates that. And so when she asks for help, Luffy takes off his hat that Shanks gave to him and puts it on her. His treasure, his hat, the thing that's most valuable to him in this world potentially, the symbol of his dreams, he entrusts to her. And there are like 4 or 5 meanings to this. It's a symbol of trust. Despite her quote-unquote betrayals, he's entrusting her with this beautiful symbol of everything that he stands for, that he treasures. So that means a lot. It's also just a sign of comfort and encouragement and of togetherness and I'm there for you. Just putting a hat on her. Just the act itself, but also, I look at this as the formal induction of Nami into the crew. Like I was alluding to earlier, crewmates and friends, we share everything amongst ourselves. Your problems are mine. Before, Nami had been on the outside looking in, building connections but not diving into them. But this completely opens her up to the possibility of being 100% wholeheartedly a member of the crew. And I think Luffy is symbolically bringing her in here. It's a beautiful gesture. It's a beautiful moment. I love it. And then he walks over to the squad. They all have their own poses, and it's so cool. And I was advised at a couple of points to watch the anime adaptation for some of these scenes. I watched the adaptation for this scene, this walk to Arlong, and it was really great. And Johnny and Yosaku are back, risking their lives, blocking the doors from the villagers, saying that we need more firepower to take them on. We need our crew. And so the crew come in, and in what's probably my favorite Johnny Yosaku moment, they say straight up that they are willing to risk their lives to fight these guys because they made Nami cry. You can't make our crewmate cry. So they engage in that as well, very directly. But anyways, everyone's let in, and Luffy, the first thing he does is give Arlong a hell of a punch because you made our shipmate cry. You made my friend cry. And I love as they're squatting up, everyone's talking about how they're going to be fighting here. They're all posing really nicely. And Sanji says, just leave a little bit for the rest of us to Luffy when it comes to the fight. Luffy says, okay. And then Usopp says, it's okay if you don't want to share with me, Luffy. Which is just funny and very consistent to his character. One thing that I would say about Usopp is he's very honest, which is funny given that he was characterized by the tall tales and the lies he spun. But nonetheless, I would characterize him as honest, very honest through his actions and through what he does and what he says, through these flaws. And then the fight starts, and in the middle of the fight, what's funny is that Luffy uses this pinwheel move, Gum Gum pinwheel, where he's going in a circle, a pinwheel motion. And he was inspired by it because Genzo, a notable aspect of his character's design is he has a pinwheel on his head. You know, Luffy looked at that and he thought it was cool and he goes, you know what, I want to emulate that because that's cool, whatever. I also look at it as the idea that he wouldn't have tried to emulate that if he didn't respect Genzo. I don't know for sure, but I think it's both him just thinking the pinwheel is interesting because he made a remark about it, and also him looking at Genzo as an impressive person. I just think it's indicative. I don't know if I'm right, but the first thing I thought when I saw that was that he wouldn't have had his move inspired by someone who he didn't respect. And Genzo, throughout the arc, shows a ton of things to be respected. The fight continues, and going back to Usopp, he's fighting, and then he starts running away, very Usopp-like, and I love how his cowardice just gives a great amount of variability to the interactions within the fight. It just keeps things fresh. Not everyone has to be a stoic badass. I adore Sanji and Zoro together. This is the first time we see them really fighting together, and they are just such a great duo. They have such an amazing back and forth of dialogue, and just them fighting together is so raw and cool and badass, and it's great. But I don't think it would be as powerful if we didn't have someone like Usopp to contrast that through his very human cowardice, very honest cowardice. And in the midst of that, we see Nojiko observing Usopp, and she goes, what spurs him on to be courageous? And we get an answer to that in a little bit. But it's pure chaos everywhere. Luffy, because he tried out this new move, he gets stuck in the ocean, he can't move properly because of the devil fruit, and so Nojiko and Genzo go to save him in this absolutely insane situation as they stretch his neck all the way above water so he can breathe, and he's weighed down by a rock and they have to break the rock free so that he can come out. It's insane. It's like, the context of that is only in One Piece could something like that ever happen, and I love it. And Zoro, I have to, it's part of the ritual, I have to talk about a couple of Zoro's lines. He says, "Listen up, there's a man I have to meet, and until I see him again, no one takes my life." And I think that the wording there is very distinctive. He said, "There's a man I have to meet, and until I see him again." Not, "There's a man I have to beat, to fight, to defeat, to kill, and until I fight him again, until I duel him again." When he's thinking of Mihawk here, he's just thinking of seeing him, not fighting him. So I think that's interesting because I think it speaks of the growing adversarial yet respectful relationship and dynamic between them. He just looks forward to meeting him again. Of course they're gonna fight, but I think the distinction there is very deliberate in the wording, and it shows his respect for Mihawk, his respect for the man who respected him in kind. And he also says, "I may only have 3 blades, but they're weightier than yours," talking to Hachi, the octopus man, who was pretty cool. He was fine. But I love that line from Zoro. "My blades are weightier than yours." What makes them weightier? His conviction, his dreams, the weight of his resolve, of what he's fighting for. It's a no-brainer as to why his blades are heavier, because of what they represent, because of what he's fighting for. And Sanji's fighting as well, like I kind of alluded to. And we get to a point where one of Usopp's men says to him, talks about the inferiority of the human species, and he says that his heroism, Sanji's heroism, is a bunch of hot air. It's immaterial, it's meaningless, it won't lead to any great outcomes, it is pointless, and him fighting for it is pointless, and he's just weak. And this upsets Sanji. It shows that it upsets him, the idea of fighting for nothing, his fight being for nothing. It upsets him, and it makes him want to prove him wrong. And so that kind of keys into the idea that I talked about earlier, where every Straw Hat gets a moment to shine. They all get interesting details added to their character, interesting things said to them, interesting lines, good reactions, and I just love it. I just love it. Sanji's probably the least important of the Straw Hats for this arc, which makes sense given he was the most important last arc, but even he has some interesting little bits here and there, and it's great to see him come into his own as a member for the first time here. But then we go back to Usopp, who is being chased by this, I need to look it up. I'm just gonna Google Arlong Pirate Big Lips. Chu. So Usopp is being chased by Chu, and he's just running and running and running like the coward that he is, self-admittedly. And it comes to a point where he plays dead because he had ketchup packets, which is interesting. He just keeps them on hand for a situation like this. Very handy. So Chu thinks that Usopp is dead, and Chu walks away. And then we get one of my favorite little stretches of the story so far. An internalization and internal struggle for Usopp. And I was laughing at this at first, and it is funny. It is funny because it's very loyal to who Usopp is, but it quickly became a little pathetic in a great way. Great for his character, very well written in a way that makes me love him, but nonetheless it became a little pathetic because he gets up and he's going, "Oh, I faked my death. I gotta look like I have some battle scars, like I was in a fight. What will I say to everyone to make it seem like I actually fought? Let me cover myself in some dirt. What'll I say? Oh, damn, they got away from me. Luffy, sorry I couldn't catch him. Sorry I lost." And he's thinking about all these things he could say to make up for an excuse, and a lie that says that he was part of this fight. Yet another tall tale. But as the words from all of his friends and the experiences he's been through sort of permeate his mind, he thinks of how brave his crewmates are, and he thinks about what they did for their conviction and dream and in the face of danger. And he thinks back to himself, who's trying to say, "Oh yeah, I fought really hard. You should have seen me in that fight," and just lying. And he considers it shameful. He considers it pathetic. And so as Chu is walking away, he goes, "I don't want to be this person. I want to change. I want to be brave. I want to expand my horizons and be courageous." And it's inspirational. It's genuinely inspirational for him to overcome these boundaries and see the type of person he wants to be and begin to embody that. So he calls out to Chu, "I'm not dead. We better fight," because he wants to fight for real. He thinks back to Luffy and the crew, and he says that they live every day like there's no tomorrow, with complete bravery and heart and conviction. And he sees them laugh, and he says they laugh with such gusto and life. And he says, "The reason I joined was because I wanted to be brave like them, to leave no regrets behind, to put everything out there, and be the best that I can be, so that I can laugh wholeheartedly, so that I can have no regrets, so I can be brave." So it's kind of outlined here that Usopp now has the most abstract goal, just bettering himself, becoming more of the person he wants to be through this quest. And I think that's brilliant. I think that's beautiful. I think that his gradual evolution to a brave person is so enticing for this journey. I think, for me, it's the most interesting hook out of everyone. Maybe aside from Zoro on the crew. You know, all of them are great. Becoming the king of the pirates, getting the One Piece, finding the All Blue, mapping out the ocean, becoming the greatest swordsman. Those are all really interesting goals that I love to see come to fruition. But Usopp's goal is just to be better, to be braver, to be more proud of himself. And there's a heart in that really engages me and makes me want to see his journey. The pretend pirate is now over. Usopp is now inspired to do his best. And he doesn't have to be fearless and badass and putting his life on the line and skewering himself like Zoro does on the way to his dreams. He doesn't have to be like them. He doesn't have to be like Luffy. He doesn't have to be as badass as all of them. He just has to be the best Usopp he can be. And that will still consist of flaws in his eyes, cowardice. That will still consist of running away on occasion. But now, instead of running away constantly, there will be running away, gathering yourself, and then fighting again to finish the fight. He doesn't need to be bereft of fear or super strong. He just needs to be Usopp. He just needs to be courageous, and he just needs to do his best. He's inspired by his teammates, and he wants to be worthy of them, and worthy of being one of them. And he wants to be able to just go, "Yeah, I put myself out there in the same way they did, and I'm proud of that." And so if you merge this with something that was said to Sanji about humans are so inferior, all your ideals and your heroism, it's full of hot air. And you know, humans are like that sometimes. Sometimes humans spout hot air. Sometimes they're full of shit. Sometimes they don't know what they're talking about and they just posture, and their ideals are empty. You know, there is some truth in that. But within that hot air, there is richness and a desire to do better, and a desire to do right and to protect. And so that flawed humanity, there is beauty in that. That inferior humanity, there is perseverance and an ability to continuously come back from setbacks. And I think that line relates to the whole crew, to Sanji, of course it was said to him, but to Usopp arguably the most, at least at this moment in time. And so the fighting continues, and Arlong gives Nami an ultimatum. He says, either you can spare the village right now, and they can live to see another day, or side with Luffy and Zoro, both of who were unconscious or knocked out or out of commission. He basically says to Nami, pick one or the other. One of them will die, one of them will live. Pick one. Forcing Nami essentially into a choice similar to what Bell-mère made, herself or her daughters. And so Nami's given this choice, and she chooses to fight. She's learned enough to know that she would have no regrets if she just says to the village, please help me. Let's fight them. Let's fight back. And when she says that, I don't know if it's the first one, but it's one of the only genuine smiles we've seen Nami give. So we think back to her trying to convince the village, as when she was a child, that she'll be okay serving Arlong. And then when she's an adult, that she'll be okay serving Arlong more after he betrayed her. With these smiles through tears, these deceptive smiles. But this is completely honest and genuine. And the villagers are happy to oblige. This isn't a mask from her at all. She's able to smile wholeheartedly here. And then right at that moment, Luffy starts breathing. Luffy starts breathing, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Also a cute little moment is Usopp coming back from his epiphany and turning point. That was such a huge turning point for Usopp. I think that that'll end up being a huge moment for him. But I digress. Usopp comes back from his turning point, and he says to Nami, I beat a guy. I beat them. Hey Nami, check me out. I did it. And he did. He beat Chu. and it's just lovely. It's very cute. And all the characters have amazing reactions to Luffy being freed finally, freed from the ocean. And Arlong once again posits the idea of humans being inferior, similar to what was said to Sanji. He essentially says that humans are foolish and weak, and he tells Luffy this as Luffy and him begin their fight. And here Luffy admits his weakness. He says, yes, I'm foolish, I'm weak. And I don't know. I don't remember for sure, but I don't know that he's ever said that before. I don't know that he's ever admitted his weakness before. I could be wrong, but it definitely hasn't happened often, and it very much struck me, because he admits it. Yeah, I'm weak. Maybe I can't do anything. However, I have friends who will rescue me when I go too far, and they'll support me, and I can fight for them, and because of them, I'm strong. And Nami makes note of that. You see a little panel of her reacting to that because it applies directly to her. She's isolated herself, she's caved herself in behind these walls for 8 years of her life, trying to accept this burden and take it upon herself to save her village and not think about anyone else and not make connections and just do this all on her own. But this arc has her accepting the help of her friends. When she asks the villagers for help, when she asks Luffy for help, Genzo, Nojiko, everyone. So that applies directly to her, and it's beautiful. It's another prevalent theme of the arc, the idea of humans may be weak on their own, or they may not be able to do things on their own, but through connections with others, that is where they really shine. That is where they can find strength. And there are innumerable examples of characters throughout this arc who find strength through their connections. Bell-mère, Nami, Nojiko, all the Straw Hats, it's all over the place. And Luffy says he makes a reference to each of his members. He says, I know I can't do anything on my own. I know I can't cook, I can't navigate, I can't tell lies, to which Usopp goes, hey, which is funny. And I know I can't live without help from a lot of people. And Nami smiles at this. And then Arlong taunts him and goes, then just what can you do? And he goes, I can beat you. And it's really interesting as everyone, completely spent, just sits back and watches Luffy versus Arlong. The fight slowly but surely, gradually turns into a very weighty one, because they eventually find themselves in Nami's room, the room where she would do all her work for charting maps and stuff like that. And Arlong talks about all that she's done, and he says, look how useful she is. There's no way that you can use that girl as well as I do. To which Luffy loses it, because he says, use. I don't intend on using her. I intend on her being my friend. You don't treat her like a tool. And this is where, I explained it already so I won't harp on it, but he says, I give her everything. He being Arlong. Arlong gives Nami everything. He gives her all that she could want, and she does what she loves. What more could she really want here? And yet all that she is unfulfilling, even though she's doing what she loves, because of who's ordering her to do it, because of the context behind it. She needs love and compassion and connection and freedom for those things to have meaning, the things that she loves. Otherwise she won't love them, she'll hate them, and they'll chain her down. It's all to do with the context. Arlong is able to provide her with the bullet point, shallow things that she would want to do in the worst environment possible, which causes her to see no value in any of that. Luffy does the same thing, but with the home, but with providing her with a place to belong, and with family, not blood, family. And because of that, she gets fulfillment there. Her dream flipped into being a nightmare when she was with Arlong, but with Luffy it's back to her dream, and Luffy understands it. And as they fight, Luffy purposefully starts trashing the place, trashing this place that was Nami's room, all these maps that she worked hard on. And he says, this room is the goddamn problem. This is the problem. The context. It's a representation of her torture and her pain and all that she's gone through. And so we need to destroy it, because it represents her chains, her inability to feel free, and so Luffy has to destroy it to free her. And what he does here is beyond words to me. What he's able to do for Nami, the symbolism and representation of what this means and how this destruction of this place is literally the freeing of Nami, it's just so beautiful to me. And then we have this illustration, I'm sure you guys know the one, heavy shadow on Luffy, bending over. The camera, quote unquote, is below him, looking at him from below, so he's above. The sun shines and refracts off his shoulder or something, just doused in shadow. Amazing, absolutely amazing. My favorite panel, I think, in the arc, definitely right up there. And so Luffy says to Nami, you're one of us now. And through tears, she just goes, uh-huh. It's very emotional. So they beat Arlong, the Navy starts being a pain in the ass, to which Zoro says, hey, we're celebrating. Leave us alone. Stop being a wet blanket, which I loved. And now Nami is properly one of them. And she has this beautiful small little smile as she puts the hat back on Luffy, and then she smacks Arlong. She just hits him, as he deserves. And Genzo and Nojiko are celebrating her hitting him. It's just a beautiful, gratifying moment. You just wanted this so much for her, and it's so great to see her being able to do what she's wanted to do for so long. And the village is saved. And Nami reminisces a little bit and ponders about whether Belle-Mère would have approved of her being on this crew and becoming a pirate. And Nojiko and Genzo kind of go, no, probably not. I don't think so. And Nami just says, oh well, I wouldn't have listened anyway. That mischievous spirit of hers, it's so endearing, but it's also something that she picked up from Belle-Mère. Or maybe not from Belle-Mère, but at least through growing up with her. It's something that rose about as a characteristic of Nami. And so, while Belle-Mère may not have approved of pirates, I think she would have approved of her following her heart, her being strong, a strong woman like she taught her to be, and maintaining that mischievous spirit and being true to herself. We also see that Luffy has a bounty on his head from Nezumi. I don't know the exact amount, but yeah, Luffy, and he has this great picture, because the picture of him is just him just going like, just smiling. Which is hilarious, and it's such a nice contrast because Nezumi's talking about how ferocious this guy is, and we need him caught, and Luffy just looks like the most harmless person in the world there. It's funny though, and it's interesting. We'll see how those bounties function down the line. I was semi-spoiled at the fact that bounties will be an ever-present element of One Piece, or at least prevalent for a decent amount of time, so we'll see how the bounties themselves progress, or maybe the context surrounding them, we'll see. And the celebration is beautiful. Usopp's taking credit for some things, he's embellishing it a little bit, but the key is that this time, as he talks to the partygoers about his great deeds, there is kernels of truth there. He did fight, he did beat them, he did contribute. Get your accolades, my king. Get your accolades. And then we have Nami going to a tattoo removal, or a tattoo artist, to remove her tattoo. The tattoo that she had put on her after joining Arlong, the representation of her association with Arlong. And she asks him, can you remove it? And he goes, yeah, but this scar here in conjunction with the former tattoo and all of that, it'll never be completely gone. And that's beautifully dualistically representative of her situation in life. As much as she would want to erase the fact that she worked for Arlong for all this time, as much as it's great that she's done with that phase of her life, it is undoubtedly a phase of her life, and you can't ignore that. So what she has to do is move past this experience and her imprisonment, and relish and embrace her newly found freedom, but acknowledge that this horrible part of her life will always be a part of her. It's inescapable. You can't ignore that. And the fact that it leaves a scar on her, literally, is a great representation of that. You can't not be the woman who served Arlong. That'll always be you, but you can transform that into something more productive, and you can move past it and move on, and use your experiences for the better in the future. And she asked the tattoo artist to cover it with a new tattoo, one that's a mix of a pinwheel and a tangerine. And so here this is a literal, visual, symbolic representation of her moving past it and transforming her trauma into something that will be productive and serve her better in the future, by transforming the mark that was left on her by Arlong to a mark that was left on her, a much more positive mark that was left on her by Genzo, Nojiko, and Belle-Mère. The tangerine representing her home and Belle-Mère and Nojiko, and this pinwheel representing Genzo. And what's beautiful about that is we get a quick flashback. The reason Genzo started wearing a pinwheel on his head is because when she was a kid, Nami was very scared of him. She found him scary, and he wanted to see her laugh, which is beautiful in and of itself. He wanted to see her smile, which is beautiful, as the first genuine smile we see from her was in this arc, after she made that realization and wanted the villagers to fight with her. So to make her laugh, he put a pinwheel on his head. And it worked. It made her smile, it made her laugh. And so the heartfelt reason for why he does this is because it made Nami laugh. And he's just been doing it ever since, holding on to that. So I love that origin for it. We also see in a flashback that Nojiko got her tattoos, because she's covered with tattoos, partly to try and make Nami feel comfortable, because she had her tattoo, which is just all around beautiful. So yeah, that's the origin of her new tattoo. It's a mark forever left on her, and she can't ignore the horrible parts, but she can overpower them with the good parts, the good tattoo, and what she takes away from it. Nami then leaves all the money for the village. Genzo talks about how we owe her for all that she did for us. She's a fool for not taking it with her, but she just leaves it for the village, for them to fend for themselves and have this money to prop themselves up, which is a beautiful thing and very in character. But also in character is that she runs past everyone, and everyone's going, Nami, we want to say goodbye to you, we love you, whatever. And the initial thing that you want to think is that she thinks it would be too painful to say goodbye to them. So her face is hidden, and you just imagine tears streaming down her face and her crying because of how hard it's going to be to say goodbye. Kind of similar to how Sanji said goodbye to the Baratie. But no, that's not the case at all. Instead, she runs away because she stole a bunch of their stuff. She continued her petty thief ways. And I was just laughing at that. That's just hilarious. It's very on point. It's very, very Nami. It's a great little lasting touch and impact for her on the village and on the arc. And I think I saw a couple messages in my chat saying that they didn't like how she's still a thief because it represented her trauma and the person she had to become for Arlong, and that her doing it in this lighthearted way is incongruent with the progression of her character and now that she's free. But I kind of disagree personally. I don't remember who said that, so forgive me if I don't know exactly who said that or if I'm being a bit inaccurate in summarizing their point. But I disagree with that idea, because it's consistent with that tattoo thing. It's forever left a mark on her. I don't know about forever, but she is still the petty thief. You can't just wash that away automatically. She's been doing that 8 years. You can't just stop being a petty thief when it's a part of you now. But again, through this sly grin of a lasting impact on Cocoa Village, she's able to use it with a smile, a joke, a light laugh, use it in a much more empowering context, and turn it into something productive. And it's just a little lighthearted joke to, I think, emphasize that her trauma will stand her in good stead, and she will move past it and not forget it because it's valuable to remember who you are, but it won't define her. And we have Genzo pouring alcohol on Belmare's grave, talking about how her 2 daughters are strong young women now, and that the village is free and that they can live. And what I love is that Genzo doesn't have his pinwheel anymore, and Nojiko brings that up to him, and he says, that's okay. I don't need the pinwheel anymore. Which is lovely, because the reason it was there in the first place was to stimulate Nami to laugh and to smile with regards to him. But him not needing it anymore means that, 1, their relationship has grown to the point such that she just smiles when she sees him regardless. And 2, I think the more intentional meaning here, or all-encompassing meaning here, is that Nami is now able to smile wholeheartedly without a pinwheel, without any external stimulus. Intrinsically, she's able to feel happiness, and this is her freedom, to be able to laugh from the bottom of her heart and take in these detours as she achieves her dream, and she's free. But that's about all I have to say for the arc. With regards to a rating, like I said, definitely my favorite so far, and I would give it a strong 8, like an 8.5 or so, maybe with the potential of being a light 9. We'll see how some of the things established in this arc carry on forward. Stuff later down the line could emphasize it and elevate it, but for right now, very strong 8. I had a wonderful time with it. Now, as for my top 10 characters, I'll just list them bottom to top. And I can't really actually decide between 10 and 11, so we'll do a bit of a tie for that. Number 10 is tied between Genzo and Arlong, for all the reasons I talked about earlier. Arlong, really interesting, very threatening villain. Genzo just exceedingly likable, and the way in which he protected Nami and Nojiko and the village and what they stood for, and his regret for having put this duty upon Nami, all around very captivating and interesting and emotional. Number 9 would be Nojiko. I loved what she added to the arc. Number 8 would be Zeph. Don't have much to say about Zeph, but I talked about him a lot in the last video. Number 7 would be Mihawk, ditto. But I love me some Mihawk. I can't wait till we see him again. And the biggest drop, actually, is Shanks, number 6. I still love him, I still love what he represents, but the characters just keep getting more and more enriched and deepened, so Shanks just falls more and more by the wayside just due to the nature of how his character is handled. I don't like him any less, but I just like all the characters ahead of him more. And then number 5 would be Sanji. This arc actually introduced the more perverted aspect to him. I mean, that was shown in Baratie, but it's more here in a couple of chapters in the beginning than the entirety of Baratie, so it's more of a prominent aspect to his character than I thought. I don't really have a problem with that. I don't like it, I don't dislike it, I don't think it detracts from his character or adds much either. It's just there, and at the moment I'm just whatever about it. The reason he lowered in the ranking, I think last time he was 4, I think, was more so because the other ones around him were elevated more than he was, but he does have some nice stuff throughout, and I like him slightly more than I used to. I mean, he was behind Shanks at the end of last arc, now he's ahead of him, so. Then number 4 would be Usopp. This arc did so much for him, and it's honestly really close between him and number 2 and 3, actually, but all the stuff I talked about before, Usopp is just wonderful. Usopp material, I just eat it all up. It's so great. I can't wait for it to continue. Number 4 would be the star of the show, Nami. She got elevated. I think she has the highest jump here, and it's understandable. Her character is completely enriched. We learn all the answers, or all the answers we need at this point in time. I don't know if there's more to expand on, but nonetheless, it makes her into such a wonderful character, and it adheres me to her a lot more than before, because you just want her to be protected. You just want her to be happy. You just want her to be free. The context that this arc provided was everything. Number 2 is Zoro. Like I said, it's pretty close between 2, 3, and 4. Zoro didn't have as much substantial things as Nami or Usopp, but I still think he's my second favorite character. And he does some extremely badass things and has some great lines throughout, and sacrifices himself and puts himself on the line for his crew, particularly Luffy as well. Zoro's great, and then Luffy is still number 1. Enhanced a lot by what he says about how he is powerless or not too strong without his friends, and how they make all the difference, for how the way in which he supported Nami. Luffy is just... he's Luffy, and he is still my favorite character in One Piece as of right now. But that's all I got, guys. Thank you once again for tuning in. If you'd like to see the next episode or the next review right now, you can head over to my Patreon, where it is available for $5 patrons, and you can watch it right now if you want. Remember to include hashtag AJPiece in your comments if you want your comments to be highlighted on the video 2 videos from now, and if you want me to read them on screen, anything you have to say about Arlong Park or the characters or anything. And I'll catch you in the next video, which will be a bit of a different one compared to what we've done so far. The next arc, from what I hear, is very short. I think it's just 5 or 6 chapters. So I'll be covering the next arc, talking about that, and also be covering and summarizing my thoughts on East Blue Saga as a whole, because from what I hear, it's ending after that arc. So you can look forward to that, and that's currently available on Patreon. I really appreciate you watching. I really appreciate everyone who comes out to the streams, the comments, the enthusiasm on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, whatever. And many thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.